Buddha said that peace begins when expectation ends, because the source of suffering, profound suffering, quite frankly, because I agree with this, is the unfulfillment of desires, the longing which tugs at your soul or your heartstrings like an unsung guitar sitting in the corner waiting for your masterpiece to be played through it. And on one hand, this principle is powerful to understand how to end suffering. You simply release your expectation. It's a lot more tricky and challenging than that. And on the other hand, especially in light of reality shifting and manifestation, it is, in fact, our unfilled desires which propel us forward into our dreams with a profound resiliency that even in light of failed expectations, we persist, we continue, we reconfigure, we rebuild. In fact, everything in our lives can be destroyed. And very often, it is through love that we experience the most profound destroyments and creations, because there's something about us that deep down everybody at some level wants love in some form, and some affection, and some connection. And love is our greatest teacher. So is heartbreak. And what I see in my client work in particular, for those that are on the shadow work journey, is profound, prolonged suffering that can sometimes last over decades, related to unfulfilled expectations. I think of one client in particular who, before we started working together, was in a long-distance relationship / friendship with a soul partner that they had known for a very, very long time. And at some point, they realized the magnitude of their connection. But they were married, and this caused a lot of suffering for both of them. And especially because they were reasonably, at least one of them, reasonably happily married. But through their exploration of their soul contract, through the closeness of their magnetism, they realized that they wanted to have a shot with each other. And they did things properly. They didn't engage in a full-blown affair. But there's some question marks as you progress on the integrity part of the spiritual awakening journey. You would look back and you would say, yes, we colored within the lines, but we shouldn't have been in that coloring book, perhaps. There are degrees of infidelity, and emotional infidelity can be just as harmful and hurtful than not consummating a relationship all the way, but still sending pictures and updates and having inappropriate affections long distance. And even if you take out all of the physical affection, Some people would be extraordinarily hurt by emotional infidelity, period. So there are degrees. But in this client's perspective, as in many people's perspective, and I've had my own experience of this, where I had a twin flame partner that we colored within the lines, but when I spoke to his wife, even though we didn't fully consummate the relationship and we remained friends, the friendship was inappropriate. And she told me that. And I agreed with her. And I agree with her even more now that I've continued on my integrity journey. But back to my client. So while they were trying to leave their marriages, something happened that I see in a lot of people that are working through soul contracts. And that is, they needed the other person to go first. And this comes from a very, very deep-rooted fear that they're unlovable or they're not okay on their own. And there's actually a couple of different templates that people have. But what happened is that she would test him and try to get him to step out of his boundaries and to prove his love to her. And she would ask too much of him sometimes, and he wasn't ready. And so instead of identifying that he wasn't ready, he would make an excuse. Oh, well, I can't do this. I can't come and see you. I can't come and visit you because I've got to take care of my brother's wife. I can't do this because I'm worried that this might happen. And over time, she began to pull away, and he began to test her and pushing her boundaries and making her prove her love to him. And what ended up happening is that they both failed each other's expectations. And it ended spectacularly, horribly for both of them. And upended my client's life. I won't say which one is my client, but total devastation, utter ruin. And they're working on rebuilding themselves. And like a phoenix rising from the ashes, I believe that they're going to be okay. But this story is not unique to them, even though the details are and the experiences. What we see is this broader pattern of when we are coming to love, fearful and not in integrity or in alignment, we become heavy in our shadow patterns. And even though we yearn for it and we long for it, we often let the guitar sit in the corner while we prioritize other parts of our lives, leading to unfulfilled dreams and expectations. And by the way, by the time that he left, it was too late. She had already gone back to her marriage. When we want something so deeply, so profoundly deeply, and yet are in our shadow and do not listen to our heart's calling and do not listen to the divine timing of the universe, the door will close. And it is an act of self-love, in my opinion, to walk away with those unfulfilled expectations and to set up those boundaries and to say, I'm sorry, it's too late. And to move on. It is the desire for fulfillment through other people that can get us caught in a cycle. When we then turn our attention to ourselves, when we understand our own emotional, psychological template, what allows us to do, what it allows us to do is a profound self-healing where we don't need anybody to fill our own cup. We fill our own cup and we play the guitar in the corner with nobody else in the room but just for ourselves. And it is a profound healing journey, actually, which is why I say the twin flame journey is an inside job, because it actually is. All soul contracts propel us to understand something within ourselves. And if we learn through the heartbreak, and there are many soul contracts that are not romantic, there are people who are very close friends, that are soul family, like brother and sister, that are BFFs, and all of them serve to show us where our expectations are being misplaced in other people. They show us the source of our wounding if we are open to learning from it. And this is some of my favorite client work, actually, because it's so rewarding when people have breakthroughs and when they start to see that it is actually about the self. And the other person is mirroring a complement of you. And if you see the bigger pattern and you start to work on it, so do they. And so if you have a partner that is actually working with you, it's magic and miracles happen. It's beautiful to facilitate this type of work. And so then what we do is we reach a heightened state of liberation by understanding our expectation. And very often what I see in the reality shifting community is that people want to move too fast, too soon, and onto filling their expectations through another reality or another person in that reality. And we all do this, so there's no judgment. But when we actually release the desire to be with somebody else specifically and start to learn how to be with ourselves, we actually create the vacuum of space needed to pull in a desirable reality where your dreams can come true and you can actually connect with people in the way that you want to, because now you're doing it from a healed perspective. And you might find that the people that you were holding on to, you no longer have any interest in them once you start doing the healing work. And you might have fiercely held on to them for a really long time and fought for a particular manifestation to come into fruition, if not forcing it, because you wanted, you expected, you desired, and you had this unmet expectation that you want to see fulfilled. When you really start doing the healing work and you look back at some of those catalyst relationships, in my experience, this is what I have personally experienced, I'm like, Thank you for that experience. Thank you for those lessons, but I have zero interest in going back there. Zero interest in that relationship. Period. And assuming that you've changed too, I don't even know who you are anymore, because I've changed so much that you don't know who I am. So how could I be imagining a future with you? Because the template of you that I have in my mind is the past person who I'm no longer compatible with or interested in at all. And this is the power of liberating yourself from expectation. Because when you stay in, I need this to happen with this person, that's heavy in the expectation of a particular outcome. You hold yourself back, tied to the past, because you're not releasing the core wound that drew you to that soul person in the first place. And so when you allow for the work to continue on your own with that partner, if you have a partner that's working with you, then you accelerate your healing experience. What that means is that your suffering goes away because your expectation goes away, but not because you have Jedi mind tricked yourself into not being attached, which some people do, or because you have just brute forced your way into breaking off the connection. I've tried this so many times, and dampening it down and saying, I'm just moving on. I'm forcing myself to move on. That's its own sort of avoidance technique as well. When you do the healing work, you actually loosen the attachment to the desire and the expectation all at once, because it's like you take that wound that is open and leaking that energy, like you have a hole in your aura, and you're trying to attach to somebody who has a similar wound that needs that energy leakage, and they're like a vacuum, they're like, and then you guys stick together and it's a perfect fit, right? That's kind of what the trauma bonding experience is like. And so what happens is when you really start to do the work, you close up that wound. The other person, if they're working with you, also closes up their wound. And then you get to vibrate with them at a higher frequency, and you clear out this density of this negative emotional experience that is coming between you. You clear out the energy and you take it to the next level. Or if you're working solo, like I'm doing presently, you clear up the wound and you're no longer attracted to people that have those wounds anymore. And you see it from a different vantage point and you're like, wow, I can't believe how much I've grown. You really get this amazing experience of liberation. And so that's what I believe the journey to releasing expectation is about, rather than pretending like you don't have a desire or forcing that desire to go away. By actually doing the healing work, you zip yourself up and move on to the next level. And that changes everything in your reality, starting with who you're now attracted to and who you're not.